that had to be inserted. Marie, carry on.
Yes. Wow. A nail in a short place, Pastor. So now here, like I said, in this following clip, we're going to see how they're going to tie this back to the unions. And this is why it's all related. So let's take a listen to this clip here.
From the office. Yes, you're home. So how do you, so you could say maybe sort of, having more sort of, rules around keeping the Sabbath holy, right? So what are the, the big picture? How do we sell America on this vision of labor is good and sacred, and
yes,
and also then what do you on day one take to the new Secretary of Labor?
Something I really encourage. I don't see a big. It's harder to see a big federal role for this. I think this is more a question of state and local law. Is reinvigorating where possible Sabbath rest laws. To be very specific, like it used to. This was basically the norm. As best I looked into this, I'm working on some research on this. Literally dating back to Constantine and his recognition of Christianity in the Roman Empire. That you've had a pretty consistent tradition in Western civilization of taking Sunday off from commerce and having a time not only for, it's not merely from rest in the sense of abstinence from work, but it's rest for time with God, time worshiping God. It's rest for time with community, or even in between is time with family.
Right.
So he, again, is telling you that on day one, he is going to work with the Secretary of Labor to begin legislating Sunday laws, right? And so we're talking about the Labor Secretary, the person who manages the labor relations for the government. By the way, this video, again, was recorded on November the 20th of 2024. That's 16 days after President Trump was elected into office, right? And it was before he was confirmed, because he was just confirmed, he hasn't been confirmed, he was nominated on April the 1st. This was before President Trump banned collective bargaining, and this was also before any protests broke out. I mean, are we seeing how all of this is coming together? And so, like I said, the plan has been laid into light.
These are the signs, I believe, that God allows us to see to strengthen our faith in the words of the Bible and the spirit of prophecy. Marie, this man did not say what he said in his house, on his bed with his wife, and someone tapped his cell phone, put a bug in his room in his house. This is a public forum. This man just told the whole world, we are changing the laws to bring about Sunday worship by law. Would you not think Professor SDA would see this as a sign, an ominous sign, the predicted prophesied harbinger is just on the horizon, it's coming?
You would think.
The man just said it. We are changing the laws to bring about Sunday worship by law. And that's why I'm saying again, it appears the next 4 years, we may very well see the mark of the beast in force. If not, we would have taken 4 years closer. We don't know. Get ready right now. And that's why evangelize. It's time for aggressive, effective evangelism. The signs are here, and he was just nominated. How did he know he would be nominated? And Marie, it's a possibility. I would even go out on a limb. It's a high possibility. He's going to be confirmed.
I believe he will.
Day one, this is the agenda. Day one. Now, he said, we want to reinvigorate. As an attorney, these men don't use wasted words. They use choice words. When I say to reinvigorate something, it means it lacked vigor, energy. Reinvigorate could mean revival. Reinvigorate could mean to restore. And in the context of reinvigorating Sabbath laws, to implement Sunday worship by law, that would be the healing of a deadly wound. The revival, reinvigorating the revival of popery through Protestant America. Sunday worship by law in America, it is what restores the wound of the papacy. Revelation 13, verse 10 through verse 17. He's telling you, and he's not some low-level person in government, not some man down, some municipal lawmaker, or just some, councilman in some town or city. This is a man who's a chief legal expert, the last word on every policy issuing from the Department of Labor, a cabinet department. And he's telling you what the agenda is. Where are the Seventh-day Adventist Christians? Where are they? What is being taught in our local churches? What's happening in marriages, in homes, in the work of preparation? Marie, take it away.
And Pastor, he's not only telling us, we're seeing what he has written down come to fruition, right? It was his policies that indicated that we needed to strip workers of their rights, and it's been done. So if he told you X was going to happen and it came to pass, you have to believe that Y is also going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And so may Lord help us. Unbelievable.
Take it away, Marie.
Yes. So now we're just going to confirm who President Trump has confirmed as his labor secretary. And of course, we touched on this on Friday, so we won't delve deep into this, but he chose Lori Chavez DeRemer. And it says that Trump's a pro-union pick for labor secretary. And of course, we're mentioning the fact that she's pro-union. And again, hindsight, this makes complete sense. We just discussed this on Friday about how this is not something that's typical of a Republican administration. Generally speaking, Democrats are the ones that, embrace unions. And on the Republican side, therefore, businesses. And so again, hindsight, when you see all of the pieces together, you can see why this makes sense. And think about it, Pastor, back to what you talked about, how they're ruffling the feathers of the hornet's nest, the labor unions, right? They're ruffling their nest. Now imagine they can say, listen, somebody who is a proponent for labor unions is in office. She has a track record in Congress of advocating for labor. I mean, I hope that we can see this.
Okay, let me say it. So in one administration, one office, one cabinet position, she joins left and right.
Yes, correct.
One cabinet secretary, unite the left party, donkey party with the elephant party. It's clear. Continue.
So we're just going to take a listen to a clip here so that you can see for yourself that she really is, in fact, pro-union.
Marie, before I play that clip, you said something earlier, and that is the Republicans are pro-business. May I give a statement on that? One more perspective.
Sure.
Based on what we're covering today, are they really pro-business or are they really pro-church? Think about that. Because what Jonathan Berry is proposing is now demanding of businesses to rest on Sunday. If they were pro-business and business say, we want to open on Sunday, they would say, whatever the businesses want, allow them to do it. No, we want business. We'll force businesses to rest on Sunday. You see now? So because again, is the church above state? The merchants are made rich by the church.
We're just going to mention that.
Yeah. Revelation 18,
Mercy.
verse 2, verse 3. Babylon, The merchants are made rich by her. So they aren't pro-business, they're pro-Babylon. Take it away now, Marie.
Yes, we're going to play that clip.
Central Oregon's previous U.S. Congresswoman Lori Chavez DeRemer, Donald Trump's nomination for labor secretary, testified before the Senate Health Committee today. Chavez DeRemer discussed her past support of the PRO Act, pro-union legislation that allows all workers to freely unionize. It's been strongly opposed by several Senate Republicans. Chavez DeRemer said the bill was imperfect and emphasized that Congress has to work together on labor laws. We got reaction from local unions.
If confirmed, my job will be to implement President Trump's policy vision, and my guiding principle will be President Trump's guiding principle, ensuring a level playing field for businesses, unions, and most importantly, the American worker.
I don't think she can.
Marie.
Right. So you can clearly see that she has a track record, with the labor unions. And we're just going to touch and go on the next articles. Again, we covered this on Friday, this past Friday. If you want to go back to that video, you can take a look at that. But in this following article, you can see that even the unions, have endorsed her. This article this is from the New Yorker, and this mentions the Teamsters and how, they say that she is the exact type of champion for the American worker that Republicans should get behind if they are serious about the working or becoming the working class party. So it just goes to show, everything is in place. And in the following article, this shows another union also has endorsed her. And I just want to make note of the fact that this is the AFL, the CIO, that is making these remarks, how they should talk about her record of being a pro-union Congress lawmaker, rather. And what's interesting about this as well is the fact that, Pastor, this was the same union, if, hopefully your audience remembers, when I showed that montage of clips where you saw the union workers, the very first clip of the woman that was speaking, she represents this union. And so can you imagine this labor secretary going back to that very union that is upset and say, hey, listen, I'm for you, let's work together. Now, mind you, she already has Jonathan Berry in her ear telling her what she should be doing, and they're negotiating with the labor unions. Like I said, it's clear. If you want to see it, it's clear. So, in this final clip, we're going to show two clips. And in this final clip, we're going to see how Jonathan Berry, once they've established their work on the federal level, we're going to see that the work is going to be handed down to the states so that they can begin legislating Sunday laws. And remember that marriage was the first twin in the two institutions. And we saw the counterfeit, right, of the same-sex union and how it was legislated on the state level and then became a federal law across the land. And so we're seeing how the second twin is following in the same footsteps. So let's take a listen to the first of two clips.
Interesting. Yes. So I don't think Congress has the authority to mandate like a national closing on the Sabbath. That was always a state decision to do that. But let me add, it was always a state decision to do that. They did. And yeah, I'm not saying this practice was uniform, homogenous, or whatever, but very, very widely spread, and only recently in the last few decades have most states moved away from this. So this is, I think this is about as far as the federal government could properly go in this space. But it would be an encouragement and inducement to rest, but really to kind of coordinate commercial activity for the other 6 days of the week.
Marie, 2 points, but I heard him mention a word you referenced earlier.
Inducement. Yes.
Now, everybody, did you hear this man just say 6 working days? So if he says 6 working days and rest on Sunday, number 7, how is it he's going to mention Sabbath also? He's pushing 6 days work, rest on Sunday. But then he says we are going to, we should tolerate or should accommodate 7th-day Sabbath keepers. That wouldn't be 6 days. It's 5 days labor and 2 days rest. The point I'm driving home is this. Everybody, give me 10 seconds of your time right here. These men are liars. He's being disingenuous. Let me give Exhibit A as if we're in court. Do you remember when Trump actually stated on the campaign, I know nothing about Project 2025? This man, Trump, disassociated himself from Project 2025. Who just nominated Jonathan Berry to be the solicitor for the Department of Labor? President Trump. Did President Trump not know that Jonathan Berry is connected to Project 2025 and actually wrote the section on labor? Do not trust anything these men say. The only thing you must listen to is what they tell you is coming. And their track record. They say X will come to pass, X has come to pass. They say Y will come to pass, Y has come to pass. So when they say Z, Sunday law, Alpha and Omega, Z will come to pass, you better believe it. Here it is, get to.
When should states use this?
Now notice when he says Sunday, how he's going to sprinkle in Sabbath, should. When it's for Sunday, he speaks boldly, assertively, and aggressively. But when he's going to allow for Sabbath, it's a passing point. Watch carefully, listen and watch.
When should states use this power to check corporate power? This is where prudential judgment has to come in. I don't have bright line rules to give you here, but I want to lay out some guideposts, some categories of state actions that are likelier to be prudent applications of state power to balance corporate power. Another one in the collective action space that I'm fond of, call it the Chick-fil-A rule, would be to revive Sunday closing laws and carve out a space under which commerce does not intrude. Very well settled that this is within a state's authority to do. And I would add, with accommodation, should be included for Saturday Sabbatarians as well.
I may add, should. But when for Sunday, it must. But for Sabbath, should. Come on, my friends, understand. He is an attorney. When attorneys are drafting up letters to support you, defend you in the court, they know exactly the choice words to use. They only say Sabbath accommodation now, just for them to implement their laws undetected, with less resistance. And once they hold position completely, they will outlaw and nullify freedom of worship for all seventh-day Sabbath-keeping individuals. Lastly, on this point, he said collective action rules. So one of his collective action rules is to bring in Sunday worship by law. And what have we been covering? Collective bargaining. Collective bargaining. How many more emphasis should I place on this? How many more evidences do you need to see? They're telling you they're making changes to bring in Sunday worship by law. Marie.
Pastor, I mean, what more can I say? It is abundantly clear where we are in Earth's history. All of the prophetic elements seemingly are coming together within this administration. So as you often say, could it be, it's very possible that we may see a Sunday law within this current administration. May the Lord help us to be ready for them.
Any closing words for us, Marie?
I just wanted to add one more biblical application. This past Sabbath, you did an in-depth study in the evening, to prove where we are in history so that we can understand where we're headed. And I think that's important for us as well, so that we can see where all of these things are tending so we know exactly where we are. And this past Friday, we discussed how there were three separate accounts in the Bible that a labor crisis was brought to view. And of course, we referenced Exodus. We also, with the children of Israel in Egypt, we talked about how the people united in Matthew chapter 27 to crucify Jesus. We also referenced James chapter 5, which brought a labor crisis to view in the last days. And of course, we know that the spirit of prophecy also tells us in Maranatha, page 182, paragraph 2, that the labor unions are going to assist in bringing a labor crisis. Of course, she says the trade unions will be one of the agencies that will bring upon this earth a time of trouble such as has not been since the world began. But I think what's important for us to do is to identify how the children of Israel ended up in bondage, because that will ultimately lead to this labor crisis, or what led to the labor crisis in Egypt. So in Genesis chapter 47, verse 13 and 15, I'm just going to reference those. The Bible brings to view how there was this worldwide crisis, which led to an economic crisis, right? And verse 15 mentions this. It says that money faileth. Aren't we on the very precipice of an economic crisis? I mean, that's currently what's taking place. During a recent interview, President Trump refused to rule out a possible or potential recession. And I also want to know, as I mentioned earlier, that the world's economies are all interlinked. And you see how he's introduced these tariffs that have gone around the world. And so again, we're seeing how this could potentially push us, if not into a depression, it could most certainly push us into a recession. So when the economy collapsed back in Joseph's day, remember, it was then that the Egyptians sold themselves into slavery. And when that happened, the Egyptians sold their tangible assets to the government. So you can say that there was some sort of wealth transfer. It's also worth noting that Joseph represents a religious entity, right? Because he was the one who united with the state. And he was also the one that was orchestrating this. You can read this in Genesis chapter 41, verse 55. It says, and when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, go unto Joseph, what he saith to do. So in my view, in my estimation, doesn't that sound very much like what Project 2025 is doing, uniting with the state and now is instructing the individuals, right? And of course, that's proxy for the papacy, right? Because it's the papacy behind Project 2025 that's pulling the strings. And of course, to end this, we know the rest of the story. Once the Egyptians sold themselves into slavery, it opened up the door for the children of Israel who came to live in Goshen, right, during the famine, to end up in this labor crisis under the new Pharaoh. And so I personally believe that we are on the very verge, like I said, of an economic crisis. And remember, once this happens, it's going to disrupt everyone's lives, right? And they're already protesting. They're already upset about what he is currently doing. Can you imagine? It would spark, this, like I said, labor crisis. And remember, we're also told that a Sunday law will be introduced, right, to restore temporal prosperity. So in my own estimation, I believe this is where we are. And so brothers and sisters, if we know that this is where we are, we have to see that this is where it's going. But praise God that the labor crisis didn't end there, right? It ended up with an exodus, with us leaving, right? They went to the wilderness. We have to go to the wilderness as well, right? Into country living. And thereafter, we'll enter into the Canaan land. I'm looking forward to that. I can see the gleams of the golden morning.
Well said. My closing point is going to surround the coming time of trouble. And the coming time of trouble in the last days is likened unto Jacob's time of trouble. That's all throughout Scripture. Daniel 12, verse 1. Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 5 through verse 8. Jacob's time of trouble. All faces are turned into paleness. It's as if men are having children. That's Jeremiah 30. And Paul writes in the New Testament, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. When they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Jacob's time of trouble. Do we know, or do we recall, that before Jacob met Esau, that there's actually a labor crisis? And Jacob didn't have the authority to bargain, to negotiate with Laban. I want to read that verse for you in Genesis chapter 31, verse 7. Just quickly, verse 7. This is chapter 31, don't forget that, of Genesis, verse 7. And your father, Jacob speaking, and your father, that's Laban, and Laban have deceived me and changed my wages 10 times. What's happening here? This is financial oppression. This is a labor conflict. Look at verse 41. Just when Jacob is about to leave Laban's house, verse 41. Thus have I been 20 years in your house, Laban. I served thee 14 years for thy 2 daughters, 6 years for thy cattle, and thou hast changed my wages 10 times, except the God of my father has sustained me. A labor crisis. Laban, we can say the employer. Jacob, the employee. A labor crisis. That was chapter 31 of Genesis. What happens now in Genesis 32? It's God saying, now head on home, Jacob. And then he heard Esau with a band of men are coming. Time of trouble. And Jacob began now to wrestle all night with God in prayer. Am I converted? I will not let you go until you bless me. What is your name? Jacob. You shall no more be called Jacob, but Israel. A name change, conversion to meet the crisis. So as we see the labor challenges, we know what time it is. And one of these would bring us into that Sunday law crisis. I'm not sure, as I close, I'm not sure if any one of you have any feedback based on what we have covered this afternoon. 689-777-5198. 689-777-5198. If you have any feedback from what we covered today, you may call in and express your thoughts, your sentiments. Again, I'm going to emphasize, Marie, this is Jonathan Berry telling us they are changing the laws to bring about Sunday worship by law. And he represents a religious entity, Roman Catholics and Protestants. Call your live on Safe to Serve. What's your feedback today?
Good afternoon, Pastor. This is Renee. As I was listening to you and Sister Diaz, the Holy Spirit had led me to Exodus chapter 6. And there was indeed a labor crisis in Egypt. Pharaoh would not, when Moses first went to Pharaoh and asked that he let the children of Israel go, that they may go into the wilderness and worship God, he would not allow them. Then we see in chapter 6 and around verse 15 that the Israelites had selected leaders from all of the 12 tribes. You could say that they were the labor leaders, and they went to Pharaoh and asked him, why have you made our work so hard? Why have you said that we even Pharaoh refused to remember to give them the straw? And then he would not lessen the tally of bricks. And then he beat them. And so they asked, why have you done these things? And it was Pharaoh's response was, you are idle. You are idle. And he said, therefore you asked to go. And so he had wanted, he believed that they were going to revolt. And so he had tried to make their work more, more difficult. And so God is showing us that that these things, while they may be happening in the labor, in the workforce right now, it will soon turn to us. The time will come to us when they're pushing Sunday law, as you have spoken of, and the time will come where you worship on Sunday. They're going to do everything they can, even changing the work week, changing our hours, changing our wages, to try to force us that we may work on the Sabbath. But we must remain firm, for God said he would deliver the Israelites, and as he delivered the Israelites, he indeed will deliver us.
Thank you, my sister.
You're welcome.
Call your live on State to Serve. What's your feedback today?
Yes, just wanted to kind of piggyback on what the lady shared, Ms. Murray. What kind of struck out to me was Genesis 47:15, where she identified that the Egyptians sold themselves to Joseph. And because the rest of the brothers was in the vicinity, they got trapped. Kind of fast forward to kind of Daniel. Same thing happened during the Medes and the Persians. They had a problem with his worship, and there they pointed out that, hey, you know what? So with the Adventists, us as a Seventh-day Adventists, it's going to be an issue for us. Hence the reason why we have to get out and go to the